Let me ask you a slightly thoda sa uncomfortable question. If you are an academic coordinator, how much of your day is actually spent on academic leadership? And how much of it is spent chasing people? Have you submitted the lesson plan? Have you completed the syllabus? Please send the report. Why haven't you done this? Kindly follow up. Just a reminder, and then another reminder. And by the end of the day, you are exhausted. You have worked for 8 or 9 hours. You have attended meetings, you have spoken to teachers, you have checked documents, you have answered messages, you have solved problems. But the question is, what actually improved academically because of your work today? That's a very different question. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because I believe many academic coordinators are not failing. The role itself has simply become unclear. I have seen this happen repeatedly in schools. A good teacher is promoted to academic coordinator, right? Everyone assumes she is experienced, she will manage. And suddenly, this person is expected to handle everything: teachers, lesson plans, assessments, curriculum, timetables, activities, parents, meetings, reports, complaints, deadlines, sometimes even work that has absolutely nothing to do with the academic coordinator, right? And because the person is sincere, he or she says, yes, yes, I will do it. Yes, I will check. Yes, I will follow up. Yes, I will handle it. And slowly, something happens. You know what? The academic coordinator stops leading the academic system and starts carrying the academic system. There is a huge difference. Just think about it. Let me give you a very simple example. A teacher has not submitted a lesson plan, okay? The coordinator sends a message. No response from teacher. Another reminder, still nothing moved. Then a phone call. Then another message. Eventually, the lesson plan arrives. The coordinator thinks, good, done. But is it? The teacher submitted the document. That's it. But did the quality improve? Did the teacher understand the expectation? Did the classroom improve? Did student learning improve? Or did we simply complete a piece of paperwork? This is where academic leadership becomes different from academic administration. And I am not saying administration isn't important. It is very important. But if your role entirely becomes checking whether things have been submitted, you have a much bigger role, bigger problem. The second problem is responsibility that comes without authority. This issue, I think schools need to examine very seriously. Sometimes an academic coordinator is told, you are responsible for academics. But then you cannot question a senior teacher. You cannot ask for accountability. You cannot make certain decisions. You have to take every issue to the principal. You don't have clear KRAs, key responsibility. You don't have defined authorities. And yet, when something goes wrong academically, everyone asks, why didn't the coordinator handle it? That's a structural problem. You cannot give someone responsibility without giving them the appropriate authority to carry that responsibility. And this is one of the conversations that schools need to have more openly. What exactly does an academic coordinator own? What decisions can they make? What needs to go to the principal? What should teachers be accountable for? Where does the coordinator's responsibility begin and where does it end? If these boundaries are not clear, frustration is inevitable. Third problem is being everyone's favorite. This is a trap. Many academic coordinators come from teaching, correct? They have spent years building relations with colleagues. Then suddenly they have to hold those same colleagues accountable. And that's uncomfortable for everyone because the moment you say deadline has been missed, or if you say this needs improvement, or even if you say this cannot continue, you may worry. They will think I am becoming difficult because you were friends with them. Now, let me tell you something. Leadership is not about being difficult, right? But it is also not about being liked by everyone. Your job is to be fair. Your job is to be consistent. Your job is to support people. And your job is also to hold people accountable. You cannot build a strong academic culture if every difficult conversation is avoided because someone might feel uncomfortable. Support without accountability becomes dependency. Accountability without support, that becomes policing. So, academic leadership has to find the balance in between. Often, there is another problem measuring activity. This one is particularly important. Schools are actually excellent at activity. How many meetings, how many lesson plans, how many assessments, how many activities, how many observations, how many reports. And yes, these things matter, but they are not the final outcome. Imagine a teacher has completed every lesson plan perfectly. Fine. But students still don't understand the concepts. Was the academic process successful? Imagine every assessment was conducted on time, right? But nobody analyzed the results. Was the assessment system successful? Imagine 10 teacher training sessions were conducted. Fine. But classroom practice didn't change. Was the training successful? This is why I believe an academic coordinator needs to constantly move from did we do it to did it make a difference? That shift alone changes the way you look at the entire role. The biggest question is, so perhaps the real uh, thing is that what does an academic coordinator do? The better question is, what should an academic coordinator be responsible for achieving? That's a much more powerful question. Because once you start thinking in terms of outcomes, your entire approach changes. You stop asking, did the teacher submit the lesson plan? And start asking, is planning actually improving classroom delivery? That is important. And you also stop asking, did the teacher conduct the assessment? Instead, start asking, what did the assessment tell us? You should stop asking, did I conduct the teacher training? And start asking, what changed after the training? What is the outcome? That is the difference between coordinating activities and leading academics. What should you reform? Now, if you are an academic coordinator watching this, don't immediately go back tomorrow and change everything. Instead, take one honest look at your current role. Ask yourself, how much of my time is spent on follow up? How much is spent on actual academic improvement? How much of my work is reactive? How much is planned? How much authority do I actually have? Do teachers know what I am accountable for? Do I know what they are accountable for? And perhaps the most important question is, if I stopped reminding everyone for 1 week, what would stop functioning? Your answer will tell you a lot about your school system. Because if everything collapses, the moment the coordinator stops chasing people, chasing teachers, you don't have a strong system. You have a person holding the system together, right? And that is not sustainable. Academic coordinator of the future cannot simply be the person who knows the syllabus. They have to understand systems, people, data, communication, accountability, teacher development, and most importantly, student learning. Is it happening or not? You don't need to become more controlling. You need to become more structured. You don't need to do more. You need to make the right things happen consistently. And you don't need to solve every problem yourself. You need to build people and processes that can solve problems. That is where academic leadership begins. And this is exactly why I am conducting my academic coordinator leadership masterclass, because I don't want to give another session where someone simply tells you an academic coordinator should monitor academics. You already know that. The real questions are much deeper. What should you actually own? What should you delegate? What should you stop doing? What authority should the role have? How do you hold teachers accountable without becoming a police officer? How should you work with the principal? What should you review every week? And how do you know whether you are actually making an academic difference? These are the conversations we are going to have in the masterclass. I'm going to make everything practical, no theoretical, not another motivational lecture or boring lecture. We will look at the role through the lens of a responsibility, authority, accountability, and reform. If you are an academic coordinator, academic head, principal, vice principal, or school leader, this is a conversation you should be part of. The details are given below. And if you know an academic coordinator who is working incredibly hard but constantly feels that there are too many things on their plate, send them this video. Because sometimes the problem isn't that you are not working hard enough. The problem is that you are carrying a role that was never properly defined.